He thought he'd won a miracle, but what he really bought was a secret buried in steel. That night, when he brought the rusted truck home, the sky hung low over the lake, clouds bruised and heavy, moonlight slipping across oil-slick puddles. Ranger, his German shepherd, wouldn't stop circling the tailgate, sniffing, whining, then growling low at the bolts along the floor. And in that silence, when even the wind seemed to hold its breath, Raymond Cole, a homeless veteran with nothing left but his dog, felt something move inside that old machine, something that wasn't meant to be found. Please support us by subscribing to our channel. The wind off Lake Michigan carried the bite of early winter, the kind that made metal groan and glass hum. In the quiet town of Ashfield, Raymond Cole's small rented garage sat at the end of a cracked alley, a relic among newer houses painted in cheerful colors that never quite matched the gray sky. Raymond, 58, had the kind of face carved by weather and regret. Square jaw hidden under a weak stubble, gray hair cropped short like he still expected inspection, and eyes the faded blue of old denim. His hands were scarred and steady, the hands of a man who had fixed too many things that never stayed fixed. He didn't talk much, and when he did, it was slow, like each word cost something. Most people in town knew him as the quiet Navy vet who tinkered with broken radios and rusted engines, selling them at the flea market to get by. They said he lived more with ghosts than with people, and maybe they were right. The only living soul that shared his days was Ranger, a 6-year-old German shepherd with a thick coat of gray and black fur, eyes sharp as amber glass, and a loyalty that was almost human. Ranger had the build of a soldier too, alert, silent, always watching. He was the one who barked when nightmares woke Ray in the middle of the night, and the one who sat still beside him until the trembling stopped. That morning, the garage smelled of oil and cold coffee. The radio crackled with static. Raymond crouched beside an old carburetor, his breath fogging in the chill. His back ached the way it always did before the weather turned, the leftover gift of a shrapnel wound that never healed right. On the table beside him sat the folded auction flyer, a faded sheet that read, "City Surplus Yard Sale, Vehicles Sold as Is." He'd gone there out of boredom more than hope, just to see what the world had discarded. The memory of the auction still sat sharp in his mind, rows of dead machines lined up under a gray sky, school buses with shattered windows, police cruisers stripped of decals, trucks with their hoods open like mouths frozen mid-scream. The crowd was thin, scrappers, bargain hunters, a few mechanics. And him, the old vet with his last $500 folded tight in his jacket pocket. He had seen the truck near the back, a 1989 Chevy Silverado, dull red turned brown with rust, one tire half flat, moss growing in the seams of the tailgate. There was nothing special about it, nothing anyone sane would buy. But something about the way the frame leaned slightly to one side made him pause. The driver's side door was dented, but the interior, what little he could see, was surprisingly clean. No mildew, no trash, just emptiness. 500 starting, the auctioneer had shouted, voice cutting through the wind. No one raised a hand. Then, 300? Still silence. 2? Raymond had lifted his hand before he could stop himself. The crowd turned. Someone snickered. Guess Grandpa wants a souvenir. Young man had laughed. Raymond ignored him. His heart was thudding harder than it should have. The auctioneer's hammer came down with a hollow bang. Sold for 200. Now, back in his garage, the truck sat under the single hanging bulb. A red ghost, silent and heavy. He stood looking at it for a long time, unsure whether he'd bought a miracle or a mistake. Ranger padded forward, nose twitching, tail low. The dog circled the truck once, then twice, sniffing the seams of the tailgate. "What do you think, boy?" Raymond muttered, rubbing his shoulder. "We buy ourselves a coffin on wheels?" Ranger didn't answer, just pressed his paw against the metal and let out a low, uncertain whine. The sound tugged something in Raymond's chest, something he hadn't felt in years. He unlocked the driver's door and climbed in. The air inside was cold, dry, faintly metallic. The seat creaked under his weight. His reflection stared back at him in the cracked rear-view mirror, lined, tired, older than he remembered. He ran a hand along the steering wheel, feeling the grit of old dust. Beneath it, his fingers brushed a faint groove, something etched into the plastic. A name, Lawson, barely visible, scratched in with a knife. He frowned. It wasn't unusual. People carved their names into things all the time. but something about this one felt deliberate, not graffiti, a mark. He leaned closer, the beam of his flashlight tracing the dashboard. The glove compartment was locked. He pulled at it gently. No give. A small brass keyhole glinted beneath years of grime, the kind used in old military vehicles. He felt a strange chill slide down his spine. "Lawson," he murmured again. "Why does that sound familiar?" Ranger let out another soft growl, this time directed toward the floorboard beneath the driver's seat. Raymond tilted the flashlight down. Something there, something metallic, caught the light, half hidden under a layer of carpet that didn't match the rest. He reached down, fingers brushing cold steel. The carpet peeled back easily, and what he saw beneath made his pulse kick. A small welded panel, rough, unpainted, covering a square compartment. He stared at it, the wind outside moaning against the door. His mouth went dry. "Someone hid something here, Ranger." His voice came out low, almost reverent. "And I think they didn't want it found." The dog's ears flattened. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. The hum of the radio died, swallowed by silence. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, thin, uncertain flakes drifting through the broken windows of the garage. Raymond stayed still, one hand on the hidden steel panel, feeling the weight of something waiting beneath, something that would change everything. The night deepened over Ashfield, thick with mist that rolled in from Lake Michigan, smothering the streetlights and swallowing sound. In the dim light of his garage, Raymond Cole stood hunched beside the rusted truck, breath rising in shallow clouds. Ranger paced in circles, hackles raised, nails clicking against the concrete. The dog's low growl reverberated off the metal walls, soft at first, then sharper, as if urging his master to see what he'd missed. The beam of Raymond's flashlight cut across the interior, landing on the patch of uneven steel. It had been welded in a hurry, sloppy seams, rough beads, as if someone had done the job with shaking hands. "Easy, boy," Raymond murmured, though his own voice trembled. He crouched, the stiffness in his knees forgotten. The chill in the metal bit into his palms. He tapped lightly with a wrench. The sound was hollow, not solid like the rest. Ranger's ears twitched. That hollow thud felt like an answer. Raymond found an old chisel, wedged it under the seam, and began to pry. The first strike sent sparks skittering, lighting up Ranger's tense silhouette. It took 10 minutes of sweat and muttered curses before the panel gave way. A single dull clang echoed through the garage. Beneath it was a small compartment, just big enough to fit a box. The air that rose from it smelled of old oil and something else, something metallic and wrong. Inside lay a military-issue ammo case, green paint flaked and hinges rusted but intact. The stenciled letters on the side read, "U.S. Property." Raymond sat back on his heels, breathing hard. For a moment he only stared. His reflection shimmered faintly on the steel lid, ghostly under the light. He reached for it, fingers steady out of habit, though his pulse raced. The latch stuck, then gave with a squeal. Inside lay a bundle of sealed plastic bags, each yellowed with age. The top one contained a folded map, brittle and stained. Another held photographs, black and white, some faded, some sharp. Men in uniform, smiling. Dusty terrain behind them. He lifted one photo. The back had a handwritten note, "Rescue Unit Bravo, Kandahar Province, 2008. His stomach tightened. He remembered that name. The unit had vanished 15 years ago, lost in a mission gone wrong, buried under conflicting reports. Raymond flipped another photo and froze. The man in the picture wore a fatigues jacket with a name tag. Mills, D. He dug deeper and found an ID card sealed in cracked plastic. The picture was the same man. Square face, sandy hair, a small scar on his chin. Major David Mills. MIA, presumed dead. Raymond's throat went dry. He had seen Mills once, just a flash of him, years ago, during a chaotic evacuation in Iraq. Mills had been one of those officers who smiled easily, who carried exhaustion behind clear, bright eyes. And now, here he was, reduced to a forgotten relic in a hidden box. Raymond leaned back against the cold door, the weight of the find settling in. His chest. Why was this here? Who buried it? The map caught his attention again. He spread it across the truck bed, careful not to tear it. The paper crackled under his touch. It was a topographical chart of northern Michigan, marked with faint pencil lines. Near the upper corner, someone had drawn a small X and circled it twice. Written beside it, barely legible, were the words, Camp Eden. Secondary route, Camp Eden. He hadn't heard that name in years. Supposedly, it had been a rescue training site used by federal teams, closed after an explosion and quietly erased from public record. The coordinates on the map put it deep inside Blackwood National Forest, 30 miles north of town. A knock startled him. The flashlight swung toward the door. "Ray, you in there?" It was Sarah Donnelly, his landlord. She was in her late 40s, tall and thin, the kind of woman who always looked like she was in a hurry, even when she wasn't. Her red hair was tied in a loose bun, a cigarette dangling between two fingers stained with coffee and work. She managed half the block's rentals, lived on the gossip of tenants, and had a voice that could cut through machinery. She'd been kind enough to let Ray stay late on rent more than once, though she never said it without a sigh. He wiped his hands on a rag and opened the door halfway. "Evening, Sarah." Her eyes narrowed at the smell of burnt metal. "You're at it again, huh? Thought you'd burn the place down this time. It's past midnight." "Couldn't sleep," Raymond said. His tone was steady, too steady. Sarah peered past him, saw the truck, the scattered tools. "That thing better be worth it," she muttered, then noticed Ranger sitting alert by the open bed, eyes glowing in the dim. "That dog of yours looks like he's guarding a secret." Raymond managed a dry smile. "Maybe he is." She shrugged, exhaling smoke. "Long as it doesn't bite me or blow up the block, we're square." She flicked the ash, turned to leave, then hesitated. "You should get some rest, Ray. You look worse than usual." When the door shut behind her, the garage felt colder. He returned to the map. Ranger watched him silently, the rise and fall of the dog's chest steady but tense. Raymond folded the photo of Major Mills, sliding it into his pocket. He could call someone, maybe the local police or the VA office in Grand Rapids, but something in his gut told him not to. He'd seen too many truths buried under paperwork, too many names turned into silence. He traced the route on the map with a trembling finger. "Camp Eden," he whispered. "If there's a secret out there, we're gonna find it, boy." Ranger gave a low, quiet bark in reply. Outside, the fog thickened, curling against the windows like smoke from an unseen fire. The map lay open on the hood of the truck, the circle around Camp Eden glinting faintly under the light. An invitation or a warning? Raymond didn't know, yet which. Morning came gray and cold, the kind of morning that didn't bother with light. Raymond sat at his kitchen table with the map spread out beside an untouched cup of coffee. The lines, the markings, the circled name Camp Eden had haunted him all night. He finally folded the map and drove to the Ashfield Police Department, a squat brick building that smelled of rain and dust. Inside, an officer behind the counter looked up from his phone. His badge read Deputy Carl Simmons, a broad man in his early 30s, thick shoulders under his uniform, sandy hair cropped tight, a neat goatee, and eyes that carried a permanent shade of boredom. Raymond explained everything: the hidden box, the photographs, the map pointing to the forest north of town. He laid the folded sheet on the counter. Simmons barely glanced at it before letting out a low chuckle. "Mr. Cole, right? Navy vet?" Raymond nodded. The deputy leaned forward, resting his arms on the counter. "Look, I respect your service, but we get calls like this every month. Hidden bases, old ghosts, buried secrets. Half the time it's just junk from the Cold War. There's a chemical site under there," Raymond said quietly. "If that place burns, it could poison the lake." Simmons sighed, spinning his pen between his fingers. "Sir, Red Pine Timber owns that area now. They've got permits to clear it for access roads. You can take it up with the forestry office if you like, but it's private land. We're not sending a squad because your dog found an old ammo box." Something in Raymond snapped. He leaned closer, voice low. "You think I don't know the difference between scrap and a military supply cache? I've seen what buried fuel does to a river. It doesn't wash out." The deputy's jaw tightened. "I think you need some rest, Mr. Cole." He pushed the map back. "Maybe talk to the VA again. It sounds like you're chasing ghosts." Raymond folded the map without another word and left. Outside, the air felt heavier, the clouds low and bruised. Ranger sat waiting in the truck, head cocked as if sensing his master's anger. "No one's coming," Raymond muttered, starting the engine. "It's just us again." By late afternoon, they reached the edge of Blackwood National Forest, where the red pine logging site had begun cutting deep scars into the land. The dirt road wound through naked stumps and black smoke rising from burn piles. The smell of gasoline and ash mixed with the damp scent of pine. Ranger pressed his nose to the window, uneasy. A group of men worked near a bulldozer, hard hats, reflective vests, red logos stitched over their jackets. Among them stood Eli Turner, the site foreman. He was a tall, powerfully built man in his early 40s, with dark skin, a shaved head, and a trimmed beard flecked with gray. His voice carried authority, his crew jumped when he barked orders. But there was something off in his eyes, fatigue or guilt, maybe both. Years of corporate deadlines had hardened him, but the weight of compromise showed in his shoulders. Raymond parked at the roadside and approached. Turner spotted him immediately, his expression tightening. "This area is restricted," he called. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Raymond said. "Name's Cole. Used to serve in the Navy. I think you're burning through something you shouldn't." Turner wiped sweat from his brow, smearing soot across his forehead. "You one of those environmental types? We've got clearance from the state." Raymond unfolded the map. "This line here," he said, pointing, "runs right under your clearing zone. It's not just dirt. You're on top of a buried military fuel depot. If your fires reach that—" Turner snorted. "Sir, we've been running test drills all week. Nothing but clay and roots. You're seeing ghosts." Before Raymond could answer, a crack echoed through the valley. One of the smaller burn pits flared suddenly, flames leaping higher, licking at the dry brush beyond. The workers shouted. Turner cursed and ran toward the blaze. "Grab the hoses! Move!" Raymond and Ranger followed. The smell hit first. Acrid, chemical, not wood smoke, but something sharper. Ranger began barking, frantic, tugging at the leash toward the hillside. Raymond turned. Through the haze, he saw a thin metal vent jutting from the ground, half melted, spewing faint smoke. It wasn't part of Red Pine's setup. He recognized the design instantly. Military exhaust conduit, mid-'80s construction. His stomach clenched. "Turner," he shouted, "you're burning right on top of it." The man turned, confusion flashing across his face, then realization. "Everyone back! Shut it down now!" Workers scrambled, water hissed, but the fire had already spread across the dry grass. Ranger barked louder, pawing at the soil near the vent, where the ground throbbed with trapped heat. Raymond dropped to his knees, feeling the vibration beneath the surface. "It's pressure," he murmured. "Something's still sealed down there." Turner knelt beside him, coughing through the smoke. "You sure about this?" Raymond's eyes met his, hard, certain. "I've seen depots like this before. If it's full and that fire hits the tanks—" Turner's jaw worked. "There's a water truck up the ridge. I'll radio it down." Raymond didn't wait. He grabbed a shovel from the truck bed and began throwing dirt over the vent, trying to choke the air feed. The heat burned through his gloves. Ranger stayed close, whining, body trembling but refusing to move. The smoke thickened, turning orange under the dying light. Turner's men formed a line, spraying foam and water, shouting over the roar. Minutes dragged. The flames hissed, then dimmed, but the ground still pulsed with heat. Raymond fell back, lungs raw. Turner knelt beside him, hands shaking. "Whatever's buried down there," he said hoarsely. "It isn't on our maps." Raymond looked toward the dark ridge of the forest. "It's on mine." Ranger barked once, sharp and low, staring at something beyond the smoke. Raymond followed his gaze. Through the haze, barely visible, stood a rusted chain-link fence half buried in vines, and beyond it, the faint outline of a bunker door. He rose slowly, the firelight flickering across his way. "Looks like we just found Camp Eden." The wind howled through Blackwood as the fire retreated to smoldering embers, leaving a haze that clung to the trees like ghosts. The Red Pine crew had retreated to the road, shaken but safe, waiting for backup that still hadn't come. Raymond Cole remained by the rusted fence, his flashlight cutting through the smoke. The bunker door loomed ahead, thick steel, scorched and half buried beneath decades of soil. Beside him, Ranger stood tense, ears pricked, tail stiff as a rod. The dog's fur was streaked with soot, eyes glowing amber in the firelight. Raymond's mind raced. He could feel the heat still pulsing beneath his boots. Whatever fuel remained underground hadn't been completely sealed. One wrong spark and the entire forest edge could ignite again, this time for good. He turned toward the fading glow of headlights on the road, where Eli Turner barked orders at his crew, trying to hold the line. Turner had changed since the flare-up. The arrogance in his tone had burned away, replaced by something closer to fear. He looked up when Raymond called out. "I need heavy cables. Anything you've got that'll hold," Raymond shouted. Turner jogged over, sweat streaked with ash down his temple. "You're not going down there, are you? If I don't, you'll be the guy explaining to the state how your project burned half of Michigan," Raymond said evenly. "We need to shut the pressure valves before that heat reaches the main tank." Turner hesitated only a second before barking for tools. "Bennett, Grab the steel lines from the loader, now! Minutes later, Turner returned with 2 reels of cable, a toolbox, and an old fire extinguisher. The rest of the crew hung back, murmuring. They looked at Raymond like he was from another world, some relic from a time when men ran toward danger, not away. Raymond tied the cables into loops, testing the tension. His hands moved automatically, every motion guided by memory. "I'll need a light and fuel," he said. Turner handed over a canister of gasoline and an LED lantern. "You're insane," Turner muttered. "Yeah," Raymond replied, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "But sometimes that's what works." He turned to Ranger. "Stay close, boy." Together they descended through the twisted opening at the base of the fence. The bunker door was rusted shut, its hinges swollen from years of corrosion. Raymond poured gasoline along the joints, waited, then struck his old lighter. The flame flared, quick and bright. Metal groaned like something waking from a long sleep. With a shove, the door gave way, belching out a gust of chemical air that burned his throat. Inside was darkness, not the kind made by night, but the thick, suffocating dark of places abandoned by time. The beam of his lantern cut through floating dust. Rows of old containers lined the walls, military green with white hazard symbols barely visible under grime. Some were split open, black sludge leaking onto the concrete. Raymond's chest tightened. He recognized the stenciled numbers. JP-8, jet propellant, highly flammable. Whoever had sealed this place hadn't drained it completely. A single spark could turn the valley into a crater. Ranger growled softly, sniffing near a row of cracked barrels where a faint hiss whispered beneath the noise of settling debris. A small valve assembly dripped a steady rhythm. 1, 2, 3, each drop hitting the floor with a hiss that turned to vapor. Raymond followed the sound and saw the line, a pressure pipe still attached to the central tank. Its gauge flickered red. He dropped the cables, moving fast. Years of training came back like muscle memory. Control your breathing. Isolate the line. Reduce pressure. He tied one cable around the valve wheel, securing it to a support beam. The second he anchored to the truck outside, running it up through the bunker opening. "We pull slow," he said to Turner, who had followed halfway down, his face pale. "If we yank, the pipe snaps and we're done." Turner nodded, climbing back out. Ranger stayed by the valve, panting hard. Raymond crouched beside him, stroking the dog's soot-covered head. "If this doesn't hold, you run," he whispered. "Understand?" Ranger just pressed closer, refusing to move. The first pull came gentle, the cable tightening with a soft whine. The valve creaked, stubborn but shifting. Raymond steadied his grip, watching the gauge tremble. "Again!" he called. Outside, Turner shouted to his men. The truck engine roared. The cable strained, metal shrieking under the tension. The wheel turned half an inch, then another. Steam hissed from the pipe, the pressure gauge dropping slowly toward yellow. Raymond exhaled shakily. "Hold it there!" But then a sharp crack split the air. One of the smaller pipes along the wall burst, spewing fuel across the floor. The lantern flickered. Ranger barked wildly, pulling on Raymond's sleeve. He lunged forward, using his jacket to smother the sparks before they caught. The air filled with choking fumes. He could feel the floor vibrating beneath him, the distant rumble of a chain reaction beginning. He pulled his knife, cut the second cable free, and looped it around the leaking pipe, cinching it tight. His arms burned from the strain, but the flow slowed, then stopped. He staggered back, coughing. Ranger pressed against his leg, whimpering. By the time he climbed out, dawn was breaking, thin gold cutting through gray. Fire trucks lined the ridge, their sirens distant and unnecessary now. The Red Pine crew stood in stunned silence as Raymond emerged from the bunker, soot-streaked, uniform jacket torn, the old dog limping behind him. A firefighter approached, a young woman with a soot-streaked face and wide brown eyes. Her name tag read K. Morales. "Sir, were you down there?" she asked, disbelief in her tone. Raymond nodded once, too tired for words. Morales blinked, then turned to her team. "We've got containment thanks to this man. Get that line secured." Turner stepped forward, still catching his breath. "He saved the whole site," he said quietly. Raymond looked out over the blackened forest, smoke curling like ghosts over the ash. "No," he murmured. "We just stopped it from getting worse." He glanced at Ranger, who sat panting beside him, tail thumping once against the dirt. And for the first time in years, when Raymond lifted his eyes to the horizon, he didn't feel invisible anymore. The morning came soft and golden, the kind of light that gentled even the scars on the earth. Mist drifted low over Lake Michigan, turning the shoreline into something between dream and memory. Raymond Cole stood by the water's edge, his old field jacket hanging loose on his shoulders, the fabric still faintly smelling of smoke. His hands were rough, cracked at the knuckles, but steady again. Beside him, Ranger sat in silence, fur brushed clean, gaze fixed on the rising sun. The dog's ears twitched to the rhythm of the gentle waves, his tail resting in the damp sand. For once, neither man nor animal had anything left to fight. Behind them, the small town of Ashfield had woken in a different mood. News vans and local reporters lined the street in front of the fire station. A headline printed before dawn now blared across the front page of the Ashfield Tribune. Homeless veteran prevents chemical explosion, Lake Michigan saved. The story spread faster than the fire ever had. Reporters had camped outside his cabin since sunrise, but Raymond hadn't said a word to any of them. One of them, a woman in her late 30s named Lydia Hayes, the lead correspondent from Channel 9 News, waited by her van near the dock. She was slender, her long brown hair tied back in a loose ponytail, eyes sharp but not unkind. She had the practiced calm of someone who had seen too many tragedies and had learned how to make them sound hopeful on air. When she spotted Raymond returning from the lake, she approached slowly, her boots crunching over gravel. "Mr. Cole," she called. "Lydia Hayes, Channel 9. I'd like to ask—" He cut her off gently. "You already have enough to print, Ms. Hayes." She offered a faint smile. "Maybe, but the people watching they'd want to know why. Why risk your life when no one believed you?" Raymond looked past her toward the lake, where the light shimmered across the ripples like spilled gold. "Because if we stop caring about what's real," he said softly, "then everything worth saving disappears." Lydia lowered her camera. "That's not something you hear every day," she murmured, then hesitated before stepping back. "For what it's worth, my father served too. He would have liked you." Raymond nodded once, his expression unreadable. "Then he probably would have told you the same thing I'm about to. Some things aren't stories, they're debts." She watched him walk away, his figure small against the vastness of the lake. By mid-morning, townspeople began arriving at his cabin. They came hesitantly at first. The grocery clerk who once mocked his rusted truck, 2 mechanics who'd laughed when he bought it at the auction, even Deputy Carl Simmons, the officer who hadn't believed a word the day before. Each carried something different: flowers, food, handwritten notes. Simmons brought an envelope containing an apology and a folded American flag, cleaned and pressed. "Didn't figure you'd want a medal," the deputy said quietly, scratching his beard. "So I thought maybe this was better." Raymond took it without speaking, eyes flicking to the edge of the forest where the red pine site still smoked faintly. He knew it would be weeks before investigators finished cleaning the area, before they confirmed what he already understood, that the bunker under Camp Eden had been a forgotten relic of a buried operation, sealed, denied, and erased from memory. Eli Turner stopped by later, his face cleaner now, but still streaked with exhaustion. He carried a thermos of black coffee and a heavy guilt that no amount of soap could wash away. "You saved my men," he said, standing awkwardly near the porch steps. "They'd have followed me straight into hell if you hadn't been there." Raymond poured 2 cups, passed one to him. "I just didn't stop running when I should have," he said, half smiling. Turner looked down, then back at him. "You could have been killed." "So could you," Raymond replied. "Guess we both got lucky." The 2 men stood in silence for a long moment before Turner nodded, eyes bright with something close to respect. Then he left without another word. By late afternoon, the crowd had thinned. Raymond leaned against the porch railing, watching the light fade over the lake. Sarah Donnelly, his landlord, arrived last, her red hair catching the sunset like a flame refusing to go out. She had traded her cigarette for a paper cup of tea. "You caused quite the fuss, soldier," she said, handing him the cup. "I didn't plan on it," he said. "Funny thing," she added, glancing at the truck parked by the shed, its red paint now stripped to bare metal. "That heap's worth more now than half the cars in town. Folks want to take pictures with it." Raymond chuckled softly. "It's just steel." Sarah shook her head. "Not to them. They see hope. They see what happens when a man no one believed proves everyone wrong." Ranger barked once, as if agreeing. Sarah crouched and scratched his ears. "And you, handsome boy, you're famous too." As the sun lowered, the lake turned to liquid fire. Raymond set his tea down and looked toward the horizon, where the smoke from Blackwood still rose faintly, curling upward into a sky turning gold. For the first time in years, his chest felt light. He didn't feel haunted or forgotten, just present. Lydia Hayes's voice drifted faintly from the radio by the window. They're calling him the veteran who saved Lake Michigan, but when asked about the title, Raymond Cole said simply, "There are things worth saving, even when no one believes they are." He smiled at that, small and real. Ranger rested his head on Raymond's boot, eyes half closed in the quiet. The lake shimmered, and in its reflection, it looked as if the world had finally forgiven itself. Sometimes, miracles don't come in bright lights or angelic voices. Sometimes they arrive as an old truck, a loyal dog, and a man the world forgot, standing in the smoke, doing what's right when no one's watching. Raymond didn't save a lake because he wanted praise. He did it because faith isn't always about what we see. It's about what we choose to believe in when everything around us has gone dark. Maybe God's greatest miracles aren't thunder or fire, but courage, loyalty, and second chances hidden in ordinary hearts. And maybe, tonight, as you listen to this story, He's reminding us all that no one is ever too lost to make the world better again. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might need a bit of light. Leave a comment below, tell us where you're listening from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of hope, faith, and kindness. May God bless you, and may He walk beside every soul still searching for their miracle.